Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Gungans, and those beyond the binary. My name's Charlie Savage,
And my name's Ethan Odenthal.
and welcome to episode 13 of Outer Rim Radio, the Star Wars podcast for Star Wars nerds by Star Wars nerds. Today, we're going to be discussing episode 5 of The Bad Batch, Rampage. And before we get into that, let's talk about some of the more recent Star Wars news this week.
Yeah. So, it's been a weird week for news, and I feel like I say that every week because since the big announcement drop we got back in January,
Yeah.
it has been nonstop drama and rumors and just all around BS. So this week, I would like to bring you something a little more concrete, a little more. I don't want to use the word journalistic because I'm pretty sure that's not a word.
It is,
But
actually.
well, there we go. Journalistic. I'm going to bring you the power of quotes, ladies and gentlemen. A few things were announced this week. There's a few statements made by some pretty strong characters from the prequels. First of all, one of the directors, J.J. Abrams, issued a statement on the lack of direction in the Star Wars sequels. And Charlie and I have talked a lot about the Star Wars sequels. And
Yes, every Star Wars fan has.
Yeah.
Or at least giant nerd.
Yeah, you've got to hear how butthurt I am about those. I won't lie. But I think it's very telling how Disney might be learning from their past mistakes, and we might be seeing a future direction, or at least just see J.J. Abrams going off in a different direction with his projects. So I'm just going to read you this quote because I think it's very interesting just to kind of get an idea of what he said. He was in a recent interview with Collider, and he was basically asked to weigh in on the creative handcuffs that were put on him by having to tell a story in such a concrete universe as Star Wars. And he basically said there's nothing more important than knowing where you're going. He was kind of talking about after that about the curveballs, and this is where I find it's really interesting. So I'll read it from here. I've been involved in a number of projects that have been, in most cases, series that have ideas that begin the thing where you feel like you know where it's going to go. And sometimes it's an actor who comes in, and other times it's a relationship that, as written, doesn't quite work. And things that you think are going to be just so well received just crash and burn to other things that you think, like, oh, that's a small moment, or that's going to be a one episode character, suddenly become a hugely important part of the story. I feel like what I've learned as a lesson a few times now, and it's something that, especially in this pandemic year, working with writers has become clear. The lesson is that you have to plan things as best you can, and you always need to be able to respond to the unexpected. And the unexpected can come in all sorts of forms. And I do think that there's nothing more important than knowing where you're going. And before we kind of talk about this, Charlie, because I think it's interesting to kind of discuss, one of the things that every article I've read about this has talked about is, um, you know, what he's talking about is greatly evidenced. I mean, Daisy Ridley confirmed, flat out confirmed in an interview that it was never in the cards for her character, Rey, to be Emperor Palpatine's granddaughter until they were mid-production in Rise of Skywalker. That was a script change.
Yeah. Which is also a giant one.
Yeah, it's huge. And I just find that so interesting how they've at least saw the problems, but it's just being confirmed time and time again what everyone was talking about. Now, granted, I think there was a lot of rage. Sorry, I gotta fidget around and move out of camera because my feet are falling asleep. I think there was a lot of rage that was centered around things extraneous of planning. Um, hating Rose just because she was an Asian woman character who people didn't really like.
Yeah.
Hating that actress is not warranted, but saying, hey, this was a jumbled mess, which might be a strong statement, but it's granted to think
that's a critique. It's not an insult.
It's a critique, not an insult. Exactly. And I think that's kind of what gets lost in the weeds, where there's two camps of people who hate everything that is the prequels. And there's another large, unfortunately, very vocal group that they attack people who are the actors and the actresses in that we hate everything group.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that coin, you have the what we call the Disney defenders. Everything they've done is perfect. No, it's fine. If you hate this, then you're a racist. You're all this kind of stuff. And I don't really want to get into that because
Yeah.
I think it's just important to see like there is flaws and they're being admitted, and I think that's a very beneficial thing to see how even such a veteran writer and storyteller in Hollywood like J.J. Abrams can come out and
Especially
say,
with
"Hey, look,
sci-fi at that.
yeah," can come out and say, "Hey, we have to plan these things," which 90% of sci-fi writers that I know just from mainstream writing and stuff like that, they are what we call plotters, man. They have everything written down. So it is very surprising to me that Star Wars was off the cuff as it was, but
Yeah.
um, I'm hopeful for J.J. Abrams' career because he's able to make a statement like that.
Yeah. And also, I think like I just think he kind of touched on this, like you said. Like I think the important, or like the real takeaway from that is the fact that he just did have to work in a universe with constraints. A lot of the stuff he has worked on has either been original stuff or adaptations from a book, or it's been a reboot. So there's a
Yeah,
lot of like places to work in there, like within those.
yeah.
With Star Wars, where you're like, everything has to basically line up with 6 movies, two
You have to make
TV
a new
shows at the
story.
time. Yeah,
You have to make a new story. And if you haven't absorbed all this content, you're screwed because you're either going to make something that's like this but not good enough, you're going to copy this, or you're going to make something that doesn't make any sense.
exactly.
And I have a lot of credit. I will give a lot of credit, excuse me, to the writers who were involved in this project.
Hmm.
Um, in the first stages. As we got later, they clearly fell into that camp of, the second movie, everyone was like, "This is A New Hope. I don't want this. I'm gonna go watch A New Hope because A
Yeah,
New Hope's better." And then we got to the Rise of Skywalker, and it was out of left field, and it didn't make sense. It didn't connect. It was really just, they were tweeting a lot of things to make things canon and make things sense, and it was just very clear that they needed to plan these things from the beginning. But one of the things that was also going on was there was so much hate for J.J. Abrams.
yeah,
And I think it's interesting just from our perspective because I had a lot of criticism with J.J. Abrams, especially in his directing style. But um, John Boyega, this is kind of a segue, but they're two related topics in my heart. John Boyega was in a recent interview, and he was asked about what it would take for him to rejoin Star Wars. And remind you, he said very vehemently, like, he got burned on Star Wars. They treated him terribly at Disney, the
yeah,
company, Lucasfilms. He was just thrown away despite being such an interesting character. And he comes out and he says, and I quote, "Whichever way, I am open to the conversation as long as Kathleen, JJ, and maybe someone else in the team, it's a no-brainer."
yeah,
I think that's interesting because he's essentially saying like all these people who were getting attacked on Twitter. I mean, all these people. It's two people. I remember so many people saying Kathleen Kennedy is the death of Star Wars.
yeah,
J.J.
which I don't
Abrams is
get.
the death of Star Wars, which is, as we've seen with The Mandalorian moving forward, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy has been involved in these projects, and not in a way of, oh, I know Star Wars. She's smart enough, business savvy enough, and just creatively savvy enough to say, I don't know everything about this universe. I'm going to give people the space and the time to make something work.
Exactly.
And we don't know the producer's life and the executive's life, but clearly something has been working, and she's still involved.
Yeah,
Um, and I find it interesting that despite everyone's critiques of J.J. Abrams and how he allegedly treated Finn in his directing style, that they immediately jumped to. I mean, John Boyega says specifically he wants, if he had J.J. Abrams back, that would be his Star Wars movie that he wants to be in,
yeah,
which tells me that it was a post production issue or something
yeah.
they can't handle, something
Or it's
high in
like
corporate saying,
any sort of like creative difference. I still think the whole China thing in terms of a marketing thing just kind of plays into it.
"Oh, that's exactly my point. Is
Yeah,
it's not about the team, it's about marketing and corporate and them going, no, you've got to make this movie more appealable to this audience, and that's the
yeah,
failing of Disney, not the creators."
yeah. Which is funny because I do those movies even do well, like that well in China?
Yes, very well, from what I recall.
I know. I know historically, Star Wars has always done terrible in Asia before that. I wasn't sure how much that was really worth it for them. I guess was my wondering, but yeah.
It made $1 billion global box office.
All right, that sounds right.
Which is actually pretty poor. That's Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
So now, granted, they made more money,
Right.
but they make more money. They had a lot of revenue, but they spent a lot of money.
On
That
movie.
movie alone cost them $627 million.
That is absolutely a terrifying amount of money.
Yeah, I know.
Well, how do I cannot conceptualize how anything costs that much money.
Most of it is marketing.
That's probably true.
Because it was only 200. It was like 240. But from what I just saw, I closed the tab, so I can't go back and look. But it was in the 200s.
Yeah.
For what was the production cost just to make the movie.
Yeah. That's a terrifying amount of money.
I know.
Also, why do you don't really need to market Star Wars that much? I'm gonna be honest.
I don't know. I think you did for the Rise of Skywalker. I remember I was considering not going to watch it because there were so many things that burned me from what was it, The Last Jedi? What was the second one? I can't remember. Yeah, it's so hard for me to remember these things anymore, which is sad. It's sad. You know, I remember the first one. I remember the end. I can't remember the second one, which granted, I actually liked the second one. It was fun to watch, but this isn't our sequels critique show. So I just wanted to kind of bring up that news because I think it's interesting that at least people who are involved creatively are open to critique, and it's a very healthy in how they've talked about these things. Not on Twitter because Twitter is a cesspool for Star Wars news, but
yeah.
In interviews, you know, it seems anytime these guys are brought about, they can have healthy conversations, and I just hope we continue to see more of that because I would love to have John Boyega and J.J. Abrams back.
Side note, they're making a Half-Life movie that apparently J.J. Abrams is making or directing. Thanks to IMDb. That's weird. Like Steam Half-Life, yeah. Valve.
That's weird as shit.
Yeah, I don't know, but I was gonna say, I mean, I like most J.J. Abrams movies I see. I really love Super 8 specifically. Which, ironically, is very similar to Stranger Things, but was before Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he's great. He made great sci-fis and Star Trek, and he was one of the major producers in Lost, which is one of the most critically acclaimed TV shows ever.
Yeah.
So
I really love those
talent.
Star Trek movies, too. But anyways, let's get into...
Talk about Bad Batch.
Yeah.
As an episode, Rampage, I'm not gonna lie, it didn't grab me like the other ones. It was cool. It was very interesting, and I enjoyed a lot of the little details. I thought, you know, having my handwriting is so awful. I already forgot her name. The Rancor. What's her name?
I forget what the Rancor's name is.
Moochie.
Sorry, I love that moment in the episode where they figure out the Rancor's name's Moochie. I'm not Moochie. That's Moochie. It's fucking. I love that.
Yeah, that was pretty common for a Star Wars cartoon. We've had a lot of those moments in Clone Wars, and I heard some critique on that. But to be honest, I thought it was a fun twist because the twist was not that it was Moochie. It was, but that wasn't really the fun twist. It was that, hey, this might be the Rancor that Luke faces off against years later. And that's just kind of a cool thought.
Yeah, although there's some weird, like, canon issue, because apparently they actually named the Rancor something different in the Aftermath book. But yeah.
Really? But is Aftermath still...
Yeah, Aftermath's a canon book, but, like, it's...
Well, even if it's not Jabba's Rancor that that was used in Return of the Jedi, it's just kind of a cool touch to bring in Bib Fortuna into this, and more than anything, if they're connecting crime families,
which is what I'm
this
excited about.
yeah, we're going to talk about this in our speculation. I think it's really they're just setting up a lot of the things that Charlie and I talked about,
Yeah, I mean
our predictions at the
yeah,
beginning.
I think one of the reasons this has been one of my favorite episodes so far, honestly, is just because I feel like we're finally getting to what the initial description of the show was.
Exactly.
And that's why
Exactly.
I'm like, yes, it's all going to start happening now. I like what's happened so far, but it's like I finally feel after like these past 2 episodes, it's like, oh, bounty hunters after them, and it's like, oh, well, now we have to do a job, and there's like lots of cool, interesting moral questions that you can ask to see like how far is the Bad Batch willing to go, and things
Perfect.
like
Yeah,
that.
you're definitely getting into what pulled me. One of the things to add on everything you just said that I also am kind of thinking our new direction is taking us is if they can continue this, let's connect the pieces
Yeah,
style of writing because you got to remember this is episodic. So just little bits and pieces are enough to make the average Star Wars fan go, "Oh, that's cool. That's cool." And that's one of the things I enjoy about sitting with my girlfriend on the couch. She likes Star Wars.
hmm
I love Star Wars. So it's just fun when I can sit there and just point out little things. So it was cool to have Bib Fortuna and Jabba's
the
whole
Morian guards. Yeah,
Orient guards there and his clan. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed that. I will say, Sid as a character was pretty weak. Um, well, I shouldn't say as a character. I found the character very interesting because I like this seedy underground, like bartender esque character who's just pulling the strings from behind. It was very underworld of Star Wars. It was
yes,
fit the type very much. Um,
and being on Ward Mantel, which was cool.
yeah, but I'm just Rhea Gemin. Let me make sure I'm saying her name right. I always mess it up. Half the time, I just have to look up Danny DeVito's wife. And if you don't know, Sid, who was is she Trandoshan? I've been trying to look
Yeah,
this
she's
up.
Trandoshan,
Okay, so
which is kind
uh,
of weird. I think this interpretation of Trandoshan is different, but also the kind of point that we've always seen with Trandoshans is that they're almost every time we see them, they're just always built like Bosk, and it's understandable that not the entire species is an absolute fucking unit like Bosk is.
let's talk about this. Almost every like Trandoshan we have seen has been a male.
Yes.
And it's always been from the perspective that this is some brute warrior or slave or bounty hunter kind of thing. And it's very interesting to get a character like who is of this brutal race, quote unquote, as it's been in Star Wars,
Just kind of
having this
chilling.
shadow hand puppet style kind of character. So yeah, Rhea Perlman. If you don't know, Dana DeVito's now they're separated. So basically, ex-wife who played Carla from Cheers.
Oh
So
yeah.
which is it was very weird to think about that considering she's a bartender here and she's immediately like I hate my customers kind of thing.
Just two
So
people fighting. Yeah.
it felt like a really weird nod there, but I don't know if you saw this, Charlie. It was kind of cool. Um, in Sid's office, there's a Mandalorian helmet hanging up, and it's
No,
all
I
silver.
interesting. I
So if you go back and watch it around the 5 minute mark, it looks exactly like Din's helmet.
I did not take
So I
notice
think
of
that was
all
just a
those
little
things.
Easter egg.
I saw there were
Yeah, it
just a
was really
bunch
cool.
of uh all sorts of cool wall trinkets and stuff. I think there was
Yeah,
even like
so
some
she.
Wookiee pelts and things like that, which
Mhm.
makes sense because they're Trandoshan. But well, yeah,
Yeah, because they can collect trinkets of battles and stuff like that. So I'm very interested because if they take this character and do something with it, that might be fun. But because obviously they've
yeah.
set up this.
I'm also
Hey,
wondering how like someone like that. Sorry, this is really dumb canon weird cultural things
yeah,
with
keep going.
Trandoshans, but I'm wondering how someone like her character is viewed because like a lot of Trandoshans like they have the scorekeeper because they're really into hunting, and sometimes they view that with bounties. I'm wondering because it seems like she's more so the person, she's the informant giving bounties and doing stuff like that versus actually going out in the field. So I think that's interesting for that species from what we've seen.
Yeah, from a cultural perspective,
Yeah.
it will be interesting to see. I mean, this is a character where they could do something with. My only gripe is I fucking hope they give her more direction on the voice acting, because the character is not Sid. It's fucking Carla from Cheers. It's just Rhea Perlman being herself. She's just very nasally and she's just very bitey, and it's fun, but it pulls me out a lot.
You think so?
A lot.
Because
Yeah. That's just the perspective of my
Yeah.
girlfriend and I, where
but also
we were
because
both.
you've recently just watched literally all of Cheers.
Yeah, I watched all of Cheers like 2 years ago. That was a time.
Yeah, you're like, Charlie, you want to just get drunk and watch Cheers? It's like, sounds like a hell of a time.
Yeah,
My dad
so-
is now binging Cheers, by the way. So
Oh, it's so good. I love Cheers. It's one of the best sitcoms ever. But
It is.
I think it's funny. And one of the things we were joking about is, if at the very least, I hope this is an omen that I might get my blessed Danny DeVito cameo in Star Wars.
I can only hope. I would love for him to be in like The Mandalorian or something, just like as a really dumb useless role. It's like imagine if it was like, you know how they had like the frog lady thing, but imagine it's just Danny DeVito yelling at you, or you have to drive him somewhere or something stupid. I could actually be down with an episode of that, and I hate that I love that so much.
Yeah, it's the best. I love, if you look up Danny DeVito Star Wars, the first thing that popped up is Danny DeVito is not in Star Wars. So I always just love that.
That's funny.
But it's just so funny to think about that comparison, because they've been trying to get a lot of cameos in the past few years.
Yeah, which is
And it's
cool.
weird how they do them, because there's been some where we don't know till like a week or two after.
Who it was, yeah. Because they'll just
which
dress
was-
them up so much, or they'll be like, "Yeah, you guys are stormtroopers." It's like, okay,
Yeah, seriously, they're always stormtroopers. I mean, we literally had Daniel Craig.
yeah, literally James Bond to be a stormtrooper, and he's the one that Rey does the Jedi mind trick on.
Yeah, because he's FN 1824.
Yep.
Yeah, man, that was so cool. I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, it was. But getting back to the episode, there was a lot of small things that really grabbed me, that I liked. I mean, it was cool. The main villain, the Zygerian slave trader, that leader of that was the character's name was Bolo. That was Liam O'Brien from Critical Role. If you're a D&D nerd, it was cool to finally see, oh my gosh, this is Omega's bow, which Charlie and I originally thought was
Yeah.
going to be a Night Sister bow.
I mean,
But
everyone did. That was like the thing on the internet.
Yeah,
If,
but the
honestly, if the
Zygerian-
internet didn't point that out, it would have been like, huh. Meh.
I noticed it before, but I was like, I just thought it was cool.
Yeah.
So this is cool. I think this is a really good way to establish it, because this is the perfect time to give her. She's been given agency now, so
Right.
now let's give her a weapon and let her act with that agency full force. One of the small things I really enjoyed about this episode, and it's gonna seem weird, but it just tells me that the world is a lot more lived in than what we've got to see.
I don't know why the fuck is it, but we're dropping hella frames, and I'm quite concerned.
On stream.
Yes. And
Yeah, you're pretty laggy for me.
I don't know what to do. I literally dropped to 0 kilobits per second. It just kind of started skyrocketing. It was like 5 frames, and now it's like 3,000. So I'm a little concerned about the quality of the show. But I guess we're just gonna roll with it.
Well, we can always re-record if we need to.
It's true. I'm gonna close Chrome entirely. And
Yeah, I don't blame you. I have the script open, so I can talk about everything.
Yeah. Go for it.
We'll see if it keeps balancing.
Yeah.
If not, we just go about our Fridays.
You're right. Anyways, go continue on your point.
One of the things I really enjoyed, and it kind of made me feel like the world was a lot more lived in than what we've got to see, is the fact that Omega is starting to get she's giving nicknames to things, and she's changing the doll that she was given so that she could, she's a stormtrooper. She's really trying to live in this world, and we got our first named Gonk droid. Gonky. And as silly as it seems, I've actually enjoyed that from a writing perspective, just because
I love it.
I've really enjoyed how alive and animated they've made Omega feel. She's not just some person pretending to be a kid. The voice actress does a fantastic job of not trying too hard to sound like a child.
Yeah.
So Omega comes across as very genuine, even though the writing is a little bit dry or canny. It's just not great. And sometimes the voice acting still comes through. So I've really enjoyed that. It wasn't really an episode for me to write home about too much, just because I think we were establishing a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
We're on Ord Mantell, and we might as well just get into it. If you don't know, Ord Mantell is one of the crime hubs of the Star Wars universe. Every major Star Wars series in the cartoons goes through here sometime or another. We've had it in multiple video games.
It's always mentioned, sort of thing.
It's always just kind of mentioned, like, oh, they're going through this place, or it's just very deep into the underground lore of Star Wars.
Yeah. And initially, sorry to interject. Initially, like, it was planned for Clone Wars arcs, or a few different crime-related Clone Wars arcs was cut. And then you got the Son of Dathomir comics with Maul, and it's in that, and that's like its primary appearance in Star Wars so far.
Yep. It's just always been mentioned.
Yeah.
Is the thing. So it's always just been this, hey, things are running through this planet, and now we're getting to see it. And at what you're talking about with the Son of Dathomir, it was a base of operations for the Black Sun Crime Organization that served under what was originally called Maul's Shadow Collective.
Yes.
Which then, when we get into Solo, is now known as the Crimson Dawn.
Right.
So we've got a lot of stuff moving through here. It's very much connected to Maul.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of rumors about that. And I actually think it's a very strong connection, because with the bounty hunters and, the single buyer kind of thing, it's very interesting how this plot might connect. So I would love to see Maul brought back, and going full circle. This kind of makes me think a lot about what J.J. Abrams said. And he mentioned, your one-off character, your one-episode character grows into something much bigger. And that's the thing I've been enjoying, is Star Wars has been embracing that lately.
Yeah.
I mean, Darth Maul was literally just intended for the first episode to be this. Episode 1,
cool
he's going to be this just cool, awesome villain. And he became so much more complex than he was originally planned, because everyone thought he was cool, and they just kept going with it. Yeah. And that's the beauty of world building, is they keep going and going and going. And I really want this show to submit that. Just go full force, man. Don't do crazy shit and throw it off the wall, but I hope they're not afraid to just reference things and connect to different points, and just really make Star Wars feel unified, because these guys are going to travel through the entire galaxy. They're on the run. Let's see it.
Exactly. And like you said, I think they've been doing it well. And it's like, they even got Cut LaQuaine in the show. Like, that's a deep cut character. Like, most people wouldn't even remember his name. And I quite frankly, didn't either. Except I've watched that episode like 5 times now. So now I'll never forget.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing about characters is, you have people behind this who are so passionate about Star Wars. I mean, Dave Filoni is obsessed. He eats, sleeps, breathes Star Wars. I mean, there's no reason. The guy was literally too busy to announce his role change a year ago.
Yeah.
He's been that busy that he couldn't flex on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. anything like that, which he used to be very active on his Twitter, and he hasn't been since exactly a year, a year
Yeah.
since he got that. So it's been very interesting to just see under his direction how we've been able to embrace the one-offs, but you have to give credit back to our John Boyega and J. Abrams. You have to give credit to people giving Filoni the space, giving the
Exactly.
writers this space. So I think we're very fortunate to kind of have these connections, and
Yeah.
I just hope they're not afraid to establish more and just make it happen because I already love the Bad Batch. I think they're a great crew. I
Yeah.
love Omega. There's some things that need polished, but if they focus on just making it a good Star Wars story, then I think we're okay.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're doing. I really like so far, like especially post sequels in terms of the writers and the time they're giving them at with Disney, LucasArts, whatever. Like just giving these authors like time and bringing new people onto it and giving new people opportunities. Like I think it's really cool that like someone like Taika Waititi, bleh, I can't even say his name properly. Probably
Taika Waititi.
yes, was able to come in and work on Mandalorian. And I think
Yeah.
it's really cool that even if it's like, hey, come work on this one episode if you want to work on Star Wars in the future, and like most writers would be like, oh my gosh, yes, I love Star Wars, I'd love to work on that. Or like, who directed the Boba Fett episode of? Why am I blanking on his name? He's very
Uh, yeah, they've had a lot of guest um, directors.
yeah, but yeah,
Are you talking about the first one where?
where Boba Fett has a cool ass scene. Who directed that? I'm blanking. Anyways, let's move on.
It's not important, but I want to see more of that. But I do also want them to focus on plot because we've got 3 episodes now of Wrecker just pounding on his head, going, it hurts, it
I
hurts, it
know
hurts.
the fact they haven't gotten to the chip thing that literally Tech was working on like 3 episodes ago now is like driving me up a wall.
Yeah, I mean, I get you want to stay in your 28 minutes and you want to make this fun and episodic, but you can't just keep dangling the same plot point and
Yeah,
expect me not to get annoyed.
my bad. By the way, I was thinking of Robert Rodriguez.
Robert Rodriguez. Okay, okay.
Yeah, like someone you wouldn't give Star Wars to do a full movie or anything with. But yeah,
Which is fun. I like the idea of using some of these as
I feel like it's a good foot in
proving
the door
grounds.
sort of thing.
Now,
Like,
granted, Robert Rodriguez, if you don't know who he is probably one of the most not prolific, but he is one of the most interesting directors. He did all the Spy Kids. I mean, he's most famous for doing El Mariachi for $700, and
or
it's
yeah, or like
acclaimed.
Machete. Yeah,
Yeah, he does crazy cool stuff. So I've
yeah.
really enjoyed that, and I do wish.
And I think
How am
all
I gonna
those
put
people
this?
are being able to move forward on stuff. And Disney's
Yeah,
only kind of done that in the past with animation, so that's cool to see. Because in the past, I think like the guy who wrote Gary Whitta, who wrote the first draft of Rogue One, before he was able to do that as like a full movie, he worked on some Rebels episodes and stuff like that. So I think that we're getting like bigger parallels of that. Just because when Mando comes out, it's a bit more of a big deal because it's a live
yeah.
action show.
I do think this show, Bad Batch in the future, could benefit from how would I put this? It could benefit from having a little more different, a different set of directions every now and then.
Yeah,
I mean, at times it's just like the super Filoni show where we're gonna reference everything and everything's gonna be cohesive, and it's like Star Wars lore on cocaine,
yeah,
and it's really cool and it's really fun. But I'm hopeful we get more styles of shows of episodes in the future in terms of the situations they get in because there has been a lot of stuff that's very samey. So I would love for them to do that. I
Right.
just I'm excited for the new direction we're heading with bounty hunting or at least mercenary work because it gives the Bad Batch an opportunity to not only showcase what they're good at, but to face any set of unique problems just because the writers can go, okay, what do we want to happen to them and what do we want to show this episode?
Yeah.
How can we finish that? What situation can we put in to meet that means? So I think this is a really good bouncing off point where I think, getting back to what we are talking about before, dealing with constraints is a really difficult thing.
Yes.
And if they knew, hey, we got to get to this mercenaries thing in 4 or 5 episodes, and we have to establish getting rid of Crosshair because that's a major plot point, and
Yeah.
Omega, that's going to take this many episodes. I can understand why the constraints would make those episodes difficult.
Yeah.
But this is where they need to pay off and really show us that they are devoted to making this show utterly interesting and utterly unique.
Yeah.
Because
Tell me
when
why it's
we
not just babysitting a child again.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me it's not just trying to grab at the Mando again. And the one thing I have criticism over, and this is the last piece of criticism I have for the episode, is once again, it brought me back to thinking about Star Wars, the Clone Wars gosh, season 7,
Hmm.
the original Bad Batch arc, where these were characters who no one could compare to. They were super badass. They were blunt force. You wanted a job done, it was getting done.
Yeah.
And they're very much still like that, but the problem is they've lost their cool factor in a lot of ways. There hasn't been a lot of let's make them look badass moments.
Yeah. I mean, you get them here and there throughout, but it's like, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's cool. Wrecker can, take on a Rancor, which I mean, that's pretty sick. And, uh, you know, I really liked Hunter's scene where he's dealing with the Trandoshan with the whip, and he just kind of overpowers him anyways.
The Psychurians.
Oh yeah, what did I say? Oh
You
yeah,
said
Trandoshan.
Trandoshan.
Yeah, we were talking about Trandoshan too, but yeah, the
Yeah, and there's
Sigurians
been a
come.
lot of really cool moments, but like we've said from the very beginning, we expected this to be basically the A team. We expected there to be a lot of cool guys don't look at explosions moments. And from the perspective of the A team, there's this really big, oh, we fixed it, like explosions in the background, badass moment, we're all together. And we haven't really got that. There's
Yeah,
been a lot of emotional notes, and it's very weird for me to say this, but I want more cool guys don't look at explosions bullshit kind of stuff. I want
yeah,
that.
it is kind of
It is
weird.
it is
I,
strangely what this is missing because these are supposed to be the spec ops Navy SEAL amazing
yeah,
hero characters, and
like yeah,
I
they're
want to
literally
feel their
based off the
uniqueness
Dirty
back.
Dozen as like a concept. Like,
Exactly. So let's show how they're unique. I think we have lost that, and
well, this episode
they're
certainly didn't help with them all getting captured, and I think it was more than anything, it was really just supposed for. It's a growth episode for
Omega.
exactly. Like so that she can actually show and take initiative. And I kind of like that regardless of like she did mess up a little bit, but by the end of the episode or like halfway through it, she basically was the one that solved the problem by herself
Yeah.
because she would
I
release the Rancor.
they've handled Omega very well. I have no gripes about that. I very much enjoyed that.
Agreed. So yeah.
That's all I gotta say about that. I mean, we've kind of touched on the mall thing. That's the thing I'm the most excited for. I'm really excited
Yeah.
to find out who's Fennec Shan's boss is because, I mean, obviously that's our big plot point. That's
Yeah.
our next
So
what if. So
I think we should do this. Let's go over who all we think the potential person could be because I still think that's the biggest lingering question. We know
yeah,
it's a direct contract, meaning that they had to contact Fennec, but I mean, we also don't have any knowledge of who knows her at all at this point.
yeah. I mean, it could go a lot of ways. That's been kind of problem
Yeah.
because even based off the dialogue in The Mandalorian, she is very familiar with the Empire
Yes.
and their dealings and how they deal. So not like intimately, but so it could always be a hit squad has been sent off by Tarkin or some stuff
Yeah.
like the Empire has always proven since the very first movies that they are not afraid to use bounty hunters.
Yes.
So that's an interesting one. We have the
Kaminoans, which is
Maul,
the obvious one. But yeah.
the Kaminoans, which is the obvious one because that is the retrieve, not kill route, which is what we saw from Fennec. She was never trying to kill Omega; she was trying to capture her.
Yeah.
And which was also a really good way to highlight how complex Fennec is.
Yeah.
So I saw online today that people were talking about, oh, it could be Maul. I'm skeptical about that one.
So I
Maul,
think I'm 50-50 on that. I feel like it's very unlikely. However, I think he would be in the if he were to somehow have the knowledge, if it is like if she is a force sensitive clone or if she is like a Palpatine clone, and if he were somehow to be able to obtain that knowledge through his crime syndicates, I would see him wanting to be the one to be like, I need an apprentice again. Because he obviously does that with Ezra, and it doesn't get fulfilled. He makes his brother his apprentice. Like, I think that's very doable if she's force sensitive, but I also just don't think that's where it's going.
Yeah, it's not interesting. Is the
and
problem.
Also, why wouldn't he do it himself? Is the bigger question.
When he's just a force of nature,
or like he's a force of nature, and then not to mention the fact he's in charge of different crime syndicates.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't we see anything that? Why would he get the specific bounty hunter?
Drones of people. So I'm with you. I think the most likely thing we're running into is Kaminoans. I mean, it's just going to be that way, one way or another.
The only reason I don't think it's Kaminoans is because I feel like they would have just showed us as the audience. It didn't really matter if the Bad Batch knew it; they just didn't show who it was. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Empire specifically.
Yeah,
is who I think it would be.
I'm kind of with you. I'm gonna go Kaminoans just because I recall being very sussed out by what they were talking about. So we will see.
Yeah, and I also don't think there's really much of a way that I think it's like Jabba or something, or the Hutts. Like,
no, it's so uninteresting.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the picture now, but
yeah, and that was more of like a subtle nod, than anything.
Although I wouldn't, if it's not the Empire, because I feel like they might just put like wanted posters up. If it's a private contract, that makes me think it's not the Empire, unless they don't want the Kaminoans to know. Which
I have no idea. I really don't. We will find out.
Yeah, we'll find out regardless. Although I think it'd be interesting if it's privately contracted by Palpatine, because he basically did use Zam Wessel to kill Padme. So I mean, he's not entirely unfamiliar with that, despite how there's like that clip of how granular that gets, where it's like a man sends a man who hires a woman who hires a robot who hires a worm to kill Padme.
2 worms, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shit was so dumb.
Yeah, who hires a bounty hunter? Who hires a bounty hunter?
Gotta love it.
But yeah, I think that's
yeah, that's it. That's it for I don't have much to talk
also,
about.
Also, Dryden Voss, I still think he'll appear in this show.
Yeah, I know. I actually almost
I think we'll say right before that Maul.
Right before the episode today, I was looking up the voice acting credits. And the guy who plays Tarkin, I totally misread it. I was really tired. And I thought it said Thrawn, and I was like, what the shit is gonna happen this episode? How does Thrawn just show up all of a sudden?
Yeah. Anyways, you wanna answer, we'll tackle this question here?
Yeah, I would just tackle this question real quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so.
Alright, so I'm just gonna read it
read it for everyone.
One thing I've wanted to see, this is from Dark Sage 9117 on Twitch. One thing I've wanted to see is more stories and lore that flesh out the Empire and bring a more human side to the Empire and the people who fought for it. I feel the Republic and Empire are very one note, and I feel like having more stories about people or factions of the Empire who are not evil or not evil, but are doing what they feel is best for the galaxy is something Disney should do. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Charlie
I
and I have
concur.
talked about this before. It's very interesting how we got that for the separatists and the clones, but the actual base of Star Wars, the Republic and the
Or,
Empire and the Rebels, has all been, or not the Republic, the Rebels and the Empire. That's been all very one
yeah,
note, good guys, bad guys. I mean,
yeah,
granted, the literal inspiration for, and this is absolutely confirmed, the inspiration for the Empire is the Nazi regime.
yeah,
They're supposed to be the Nazis, but in space and worse. I will agree with you though, because I think there's a lot of ways they can handle that now, especially in Bad Batch as a show.
yeah.
That is one of the things they have
And I
at their
think
capabilities.
they kind of came close to addressing it, but not really. I mean, it was basically we got Crosshair committing war crimes when a guy had basic moral compass. But I think
And
seeing
that's,
how those other characters are affected would be a way to explore that, I think. Because
yeah,
those
and
are going to be the first stormtroopers in a sense.
this is what, kind of Dark Sage is saying, is that they want something that's a little more complex, that says what is evil, what is good, like what's question, what causes this.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually something the sequels tried to do a lot of, like, it's who is the grunt in all this. There's a lot of people controlling others with power, and some people are just trying to stay alive and survive.
Yeah.
But they have the ability with Crosshair here and his team, and they're turning clones to train these conscripted soldiers to kind of show how warped things are get. Now, granted, just like in every authoritarian regime, there's a point of no return, and
Right.
that's been proven by sociologists. It's a very common thing in books and movies for that kind of point of no return evil to happen. It's just not that interesting as to what you're getting at. I would love to see it, but the thing they're going to have to do is really flesh out the Crosshair arc a lot more in this show.
Yeah.
In the
Because,
comics, now I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but they do get a lot more into the Empire.
yeah. Well,
There's a lot more
comics
involvement
offer the
there.
flexibility of something that doesn't need to be a full show. Like, we haven't
Hmm.
gotten Crosshair in the past few episodes, sadly. But, um, like, for example, you can literally just be like, we're gonna make a comic that's just Lando, which I guess now they're doing a show about that too.
Yeah.
But you have this ability to basically take these characters or like Tag and Bank or Imperials and like make this little story. And I think there's lots of opportunity in that, but I agree that we need to see more of it. I think
Because
the
what
most
is the standard?
complex we haven't had that complex of like what is bad, what is good sort of thing, other than Saw Gerrera.
Saw Gerrera,
And
he's
it's
that
like,
character who's willing to put things on a line for the right thing, but he's doing the horrible thing for it. I will say, like I
yeah,
said, with the sequels, they attempted that, but you got to think every time in Star Wars when we've been presented with the Empire, when someone in the Empire tries to do the right thing, what is the response? He's killed, he's assassinated, he's literally choked out by Lord Vader.
or you just like they run.
Or
It
they
doesn't
run
go well.
away. Like,
Yeah,
it's just one of those things where I don't think Star Wars has stepped up to the plate in terms of what you're calling contemporary writing. I would love to see it in Bad Batch. I'm not sure. I think they
I
have
th-
plenty of room in
yeah.
future shows. I mean,
I think with that squad they certainly can, and I think that's where you can get that at least in terms of like
but
this is wrong, and they kind of have in like Alphabet Squadron.
yeah,
Just
here's
because current
my biggest thing
characters
though.
leaving the Empire, but it's kind of dead at that point. So
I've heard this argument before, and the long way to get to this is I do think there is a show that does fit that niche though. Not directly. I would like to see a lot more of it, but in the Mandalorian, we do get plenty of characters. I mean,
who are in
what
this
was
like
Bill
gray
Burr's
area?
character? What was Bill Burr's character?
Oh, I know. Oof. Why am I
But
blanking?
anyways, he plays a very very uh, um, Mayfield.
Yeah,
He
Migs
plays a
Mayfield.
very Mixed Mayfield. He plays a very powerful character who very inept, very adept, knows what he's doing, can easily mess up any operation. He's a thorn in the side of Din, but he understands right from wrong
Yeah,
after it was showed to him. And I really
that's
enjoyed
still
that
one of my
note.
favorite scenes in all of Star Wars,
It
which
was
is
very
promptly
powerful
followed up
when,
by one poor shore trooper.
yeah, yeah, that sucked. He just
It looks
he
like
across the table has this dialogue. It's about a 3-minute scene. You know, you were willing to sacrifice all these, and then he just shoots him
yep.
because he was that grunt. No matter how skilled he was just a body to be thrown away in this war of content of conquest. So
Well, yeah, and it's not
I
even
think
like
Star Wars.
that
I think Star Wars
specific.
has proven itself that it wants to tackle this, but
It just hasn't had
it
the
needs
way.
to give itself it needs to give itself more space.
Yeah, and also for especially that instance of that issue was because that's oh crap, what am I thinking of? It's after the Battle of Endor. It's where they just decide they're going to burn everything down. It's the Battle of Jakku.
Yep.
Like he wasn't on Jakku, but it's like what's Operation Cinder? That's what it is. Where they're basically all they're doing is they're pretty much destroying homes, carpet bombing planets, just killing everyone. It's kind of this uh, burn everything, leave nothing for anyone, screw you, sort of thing.
Scorched Earth is
And
what
that
you're looking
that
for.
makes it worse than like, oh, we're gonna take a planet through war, which already normally sucks. But just doing it because they're killing people for an emperor who's they've never met.
Yep.
But yeah, I agree.
Cool.
I want more of that.
All right, cool. Well, I don't think we're going to take any more questions from chat for now, but that was
Yeah.
pretty much all I have to talk about. Do you have anything else to add before we close out, Charlie?
Uh, I think the only thing I want to talk about real quick is we briefly touched on it. I'm very excited to see where the future Bad Batch is going. Like I said, we finally got to the part where I'm like, okay, we're finally getting to what like the show's initial description was, and I'm very excited for them to describe or like try to figure out who are the good people to work for and the not good people to work for, or like what is this more moral line of like we can't
Right.
cross this, especially with Omega being there as the compass. And you could even tell like Echo had the initial want to just free the slaves, period, about it. And like when Tech was like, oh, and make money from doing it, Echo was kind of like disappointed in Tech for even thinking about that.
Yep. 100%.
Especially, I think it hits Echo harder knowing that every clone other than Rex, who he's not even informed about, is pretty much all just mental slaves at this point.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing people forget about the Empire. These guys are slaves.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's just the one thing I wanted to address. I just think having episodes where they're like, oh yeah, we got a pet for Jabba, like that's not that bad. But it's like, we have to kill this person, but they're not a bad person. And I think that's where they're gonna have run into troubles with the guild and things like that. So I'm very
And
interested to see where that
you
goes.
can't do that every episode. That's the thing. Is you
Exactly.
have to build up to those things and you need to have those emotional notes, but you have to build. So
Yeah.
we will see. I think that's all for us, Charlie. So
Yeah. You want to close this out?
yeah, absolutely. Everybody, thank you for tuning in from all across the galaxy. If you liked the episode today, please consider subscribing to our podcast wherever you get your podcast from, and share our podcast with a friend or a family member who might enjoy it. If you want to interact with us online or help make our show better, you can consider interacting with us on our Discord, which you can find our show notes, or you can find us on Twitter, which is at ORR Show. Did I get that right, Charlie? At
Yes.
ORR Show.
Outer Rim Radio Show.
Outer Rim Radio Show. And you can find that in the show notes as well. So, once again, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Goodbye, and may the force be with you.